And the D.C. Court of Appeals ordering a lower court judge to dismiss the case against General Michael Flynn, per the Justice Department's request. This news happening yesterday. Lawyers for the former National Security Advisor released notes from the White House transition period, and they show then President Obama and then Vice President Joe Biden weighing in on the case, a shift from former FBI Director Jim Comey's story, that's for sure. Joining me right now is the attorney for former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, former federal prosecutor and the author of the book, Conviction Machine, Sidney Powell. Sidney, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Congratulations
to you.
This is a big win for your team.
Thank you, and thank you for all your reporting on these important issues.
And it is important because this is the rule of law, and in a democracy we want to see the rule of law carried out. Tell us what you believe the notes that were released yesterday tell us, and these are Peter Strzok's notes. We're not sure if these notes were taken on January 4th or January 5th, because we know that there was that big, significant Oval Office meeting on the 5th where President Obama was. But Strzok writes that these notes are believed to be, we're believing that they're January 4th, and he writes that Susan Rice was there, Obama, Jim Comey, Sally Yates, Joe Biden, discussing the transcripts of General Flynn's calls with Kislyak. And how to proceed against Flynn. They're all talking about how to proceed against Flynn. Obama himself directed that the right people investigate Flynn. This caused former FBI Director Comey to acknowledge the obvious, that General Flynn's calls were legitimate with Mr. Kislyak. And then you've got Joe Biden in these notes. According to these notes, it appears that Joe Biden raises the idea of the Logan Act. Walk us through these notes and what they tell us, Sidney.
Yes, well, it appears there was a conversation or a meeting that involved all of these people making the comments indicated in the notes. And that simply tells us that the highest level of the administration, like we already suspected from other documents like Susan Rice's memo to self, note to self, that she wrote the day of the inauguration about the meeting on January 5th in the Oval Office, and of course Comey's stunning memo of the same day, January 5th, from his meeting there when he was dispatched to go talk about the salacious aspects of the Steele dossier to President Trump. That set the news hook they wanted to say that the president and the president-elect had been briefed on the Steele dossier so they could explode that into the media with CNN and BuzzFeed. And then, of course, that became an acknowledged pretext for Mr. Strzok to go interview some people, according to one of their infamous text messages. He and Bill Priestap were sitting there watching all that explode on CNN and said, quote, it's a pretext to go interview some people. And then within 2 weeks, General Flynn is interviewed, and we know that was also a pretext.
So the interview that you're referring to was really more of an ambush. I know that Jim Comey actually admits that. We have him on tape saying, oh, I just sent a few agents over there. We wanted him to be in a jocular position. In other words, they didn't really want him to know that whatever he says is going to be used against him.
Exactly. They specifically had many meetings to plan and scheme how to interview him among the upper echelon. About 10 people in the FBI had those meetings to plan a way to interview him, to keep him, quote, relaxed and unguarded so that he would not even know he was a suspect of anything. He thought 2 agents were just stopping by to talk. And they didn't even tell him about the 1001. They told him nothing. They planned to keep him in the dark so that if it blew up in their faces, they wouldn't have a problem with him.
So just to be clear, what is 1001? Explain that to the audience, that they didn't tell him about 1001.
Right. That's the false statement statute, that if they even think somebody might be telling them something that's not true, they at least tell them that they remind them that 1001 prohibits false statements to FBI agents. They did not do that here on purpose. They considered doing it. They deliberately decided not to. They considered showing him the evidence they had. They deliberately decided not to. They broke protocol in every way, shape, or form to conduct that interview, and then they falsified the 302. The government has admitted that the things they put in their FBI report of that interview are not reflected in their notes, and we know they're false, and they were falsified by the FBI.
Well, This was clearly a coup to take down Donald Trump as he was running for president, and then he was elected president, and then he's a sitting president, and they still wanted to take him down. General Flynn was one of the first, if not the first, people that they had their eye on to take down from the campaign, but they also ran informants into George Papadopoulos, and of course we know they wiretapped unlawfully Carter Page. Why do you think General Flynn was a target? Take us back to when Flynn was in the Obama administration. All of these players knew Flynn. They wanted Flynn out of the way. Why, Sidney?
He was very outspoken about the Iran nuclear deal. He was vehemently opposed to that. He was extremely concerned about the rise of ISIS and testified truthfully in front of Congress about that issue, contrary to all the other, Mr. Clapper and Mr. Brennan, for example, who were also testifying at the time. He brought down the wrath of Obama on him with that testimony, wound up being fired from heading the DIA because he was so honest about the real issues facing the country. I mean, Flynn was a Democrat. He was trying to speak the truth and help President Obama get the foreign policy right, and instead he was persecuted and prosecuted and fired. None of it was right. He was telling the truth, and they were making up things about him from the get-go.
Yeah, and Obama did not like him. In fact, this is the one person that Obama said that he warned Trump about, General Flynn, at some point during that transition period. But these notes are really important because it puts Obama and Biden on the scene. It puts them there talking about investigating Flynn and perhaps holding information back from the incoming team. Later on, as the country was going crazy over collusion, we were looking for evidence of collusion, and we couldn't find it. I certainly couldn't find it, and I kept talking with Congressman John Ratcliffe. In September of 2018, I said to John Ratcliffe, what is all of this hysteria going on about collusion with Trump? And he had just come out of a closed-door meeting interviewing witnesses. And let me show you what he told me in September of 2018. Watch. They had informants trying to lure Trump campaign officials to get them into meetings. They had a media leak strategy, apparently, all the while knowing that there was no collusion. I mean, this is just extraordinary, Congressman.
More than 70 witnesses appeared before the House Intelligence Committee. All of them were asked the same question. What evidence do you have of Russian collusion with Donald Trump or the Trump campaign? What evidence do you have of conspiracy? What evidence do you have of coordination? And they batted 1,000 in their response. These are folks like Susan Rice and Samantha Power, senior DOJ and department officials and intelligence and law enforcement officials, and they all said, we don't have any.
So, Sidney, this is September of 2018. We don't have any evidence of any collusion, and yet they still wanted to take down Trump's campaign, beginning with General Flynn. You basically opened this up. This is going to be a domino effect, giving us a window into what really took place. Are there other things that have been declassified that the public needs to see to better understand this?
Well, there are things that we still don't have, like the original Flynn 302, the original FBI report. The FBI has not produced that. I mean, if Mr. Wray wants to improve anything, I think that would be the first place to start. And then the next draft of it, too, because we know there were multiple alterations of it. But there's no excuse for not having produced the first draft of the FBI 302 because their Sentinel system logs in everything. And if it was destroyed, it will log in the destruction trail also. You know, Flynn was going to audit the intel agencies, and that would have included some of the FBI's work as well. I mean, they were all absolutely terrified of an honest person getting in the job of National Security Advisor and finding out what they'd all done, in addition to all the other atrocities.
Well, this is a really important point that you just made. Flynn wanted to audit the intel agencies. You had the full force of the U.S. government all in on going against Donald Trump and wiretapping and using the intelligence agencies to do so. If he's going to start auditing the intelligence agencies, then the whole thing is blown up. He's going to realize the incoming NSA, he's going to know the way they've been investigating Trump for the last year. So they needed him out of the way.
they had to have him gone. They wanted him gone as much as they wanted Trump gone. He was the initial target. He was the insurance policy, because remember, on August 15, Strzok and Page talk about the insurance policy they talked about in McCabe's office. Then on August 16, they opened the case on Flynn. On August 17, they sent Agent Pienka into a presidential briefing that was supposed to be a trusted environment, and use him for 2 hours to spy on Trump and Flynn, to gauge and assess Flynn's mannerisms and everything in case they needed to interview him later, i.e. if Trump winds up in the White House. And sure enough, 2 days after, they go ambush interview him in the White House.
Unbelievable. Biggest political scandal in our lifetimes, certainly, that I've ever seen. And we had a front row seat to it. And so much collateral damage. People's lives have been ruined, Sidney.
And the history of the country was ruined. They changed the history of the country by taking Flynn out of that position and disrupting the administration of one of its most crucial leaders. And then they hid and suppressed all the evidence of his innocence and the innocence of the entire Trump administration on these issues for all this time, for 3.5 years now. That's obstruction of justice.
It's great to get your insights. Congrats to you. Yes, it is obstruction of justice. Yeah, and there's some collusion in there somewhere as well. It's just that
there's
the Democrats.
There's a criminal conspiracy in there, Maria. Let's call it what it is. That's a criminal conspiracy to obstruct justice.
You're right. Sidney Powell, it's great to have you this morning. Thank you so much.